So, Avatar: The Last Airbender has been released on Netflix, and I have a lot of thoughts. All right, so I kind of wanted to gather my brain a little bit before turning on the camera and sitting here before you guys to talk about this show. I almost was not going to. If you want me to be completely honest, I almost was not going to come here and talk about the live action Avatar: The Last Airbender because I truly just kind of wanted to sort of move on. But I do feel like having an opinion on this particular one is I don't think a bad thing. I think it right now it's being received sort of mixed. There's people that really enjoy it. There's people that are on the opposite end, and so there are. I'm not gonna say that those are the only opinions. There are definitely some people that are kind of in the middle, and that's okay as well. But I'm just saying it's a mixed bag of emotions and opinions for this live action Avatar for good reason, to be honest with you, because without comparing it right off the bat, I just want to talk about what I thought of the show. Again, no comparisons right off the bat to the cartoon animated version, the anime, whatever you want to consider the original. I'll bring that up later in the second half, so don't click away if you want to hear more juicy thoughts on this show. But just speaking on the show itself and the content that I saw, on just straight content criticism and just straight, I guess, a critique on the show itself, regardless of what it's adapting. Just what I saw. And I want to be as I want to critique this as well as I can in the art space. So like if people don't know, if you're an artist and you ever run into a critique, there's a specific way you want to do things where you don't want to just say something is good or bad. So I will try to refrain from doing that. You kind of want to explain your reasonings behind it. There's no reason to just say something sucks without actually having a reason for it. And I don't want to come on camera here and just say, yeah, this was bad, this was bad, this was bad without giving you guys examples. So I just wanted to put that straight off the bat. I also want to say before I get into it that I know that there's a lot of people that worked really hard on this show, and I am not. This is not indicative of any particular person. I don't want to put this on anybody. I don't think anybody deserves any hate or anything like that. I want to critique it as partially as I can, and I understand that there's some solid actors in this show, some solid people that worked really hard in order to put it out there, and so we should appreciate all the hard work that went into this show. Now, with all that being said, my opinion on this show is that I truthfully did not like it. Now, I did not like it. Why? Because I did not connect with it. I did not resonate with this show. I did not feel any emotional resonance with it. I didn't feel as though the show really kept me wanting to watch it. It sort of kind of like mellowed on throughout its whole 8 episode run and didn't really grab me at all. And whether I like it or not is not, it doesn't matter on what I think about the actual contents of the show. And so I think one of my biggest issues with the show, one of the things that I don't think particularly worked, was the writing. The writing of the show left me a little bit confused and a little bit in awe as to what I was watching, because there were certain dialogues and certain scenes that I just felt didn't really like have any rhyme or reason to be the way that they were. I think there are just certain scenes that they could have edited it a specific way where you could have transitioned into another scene a lot more seamlessly, a lot smoother, to have much more of a better pacing, if you will. And that's the other thing about the writing, is the pacing of the writing was very fast. And I understand that, the original Avatar, The Last Airbender show, cartoon without comparing, has a lot of stuff in there and they want to pick and choose and they want to make sure to cover what's important. That being said, within this show, I felt, with not knowing anything about Avatar, just the show itself, I felt like they were running through a lot of things really quick and not letting any character have a moment to breathe. There was no moment in any scene where I felt like these characters were like living in those moments without having to worry about cut, go to next scene, cut, go to next scene, cut, go to next scene, cut, go to next scene. And I understand that that seems a little douchey to say, but that's just how it felt. And one of the reasons why it felt like that was because of the writing. Because the writing was so like the pacing was just so fast that it doesn't give you any moment to sort of like think about what just happened. Like for example, there's a scene where Avatar Kyoshi shows up and she has an awesome scene, and in my head I'm thinking as an Avatar fan, I really should love this scene because I love Avatar Kyoshi and any previous Avatar is cool to see. That being said, the scene happens. The scene is really neat. I'm not going to lie, visually really cool. And then they move on. And there was no impact from that scene to anything afterwards. And correct, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe there's something that I did not see, but after that scene happened, it's almost like they mention it right then and there after it happened, as if to let you know that they're aware, and then they move on. But there was no lasting effect to it. There was no resonance throughout the show, and that's an example to give you. But that's how I felt about a lot of moments. Is there was no resonance to anything else. Where I feel like if you want to make things impactful, if you want to make somebody sort of like have an emotional connection to a story, you have to make sure that something isn't just happening for the sake of getting an ooh and an ah, but it's happening because it's going to mean something. And if it doesn't mean anything, what is the point of even having it? And that's a question that I grappled with throughout watching the whole show. And so the writing was definitely something that I felt was very strange, especially also not just, pacing wise and scene collection wise. It was also very weird in just dialogue. There's certain dialogues and moments that just felt very corny, and I'm pretty sure that's not what they were trying to do, considering that before the show came out, they kept mentioning that they wanted to make this sort of like a Game of Thrones type level of like show, which I hate to burst the bubble. It's just not. I understand that that's what they were going for, but it's just not. Especially when you have corny moments in the show where like you have a character literally telling you something that they don't have to tell you. Exposition for the sake of exposition is never good exposition. And then on top of that, you have moments where you're supposed to think that something's cute. You're supposed to think that something's cool. They're like pointing at you like and if you're not an Avatar fan, it's kind of like okay. But if you're an Avatar fan, even me, I'm still going like okay. Like you didn't have to like make it seem like I'm an idiot, and make it all corny, and it comes off corny because you're making it feel like your audience is dumb, even though that's not the case here. And so, especially if you're trying to be like that Game of Thrones level, it doesn't make sense to have that level of writing in there. And after that, it was a snowball effect for the show for me. That's when I started to nitpick and started to do things. And I don't want to nitpick. I wanted to throw the writing out there because that was my main issue with the show. Obviously, I my second main issue is the handling of Aang as a character. Okay, because Aang is basically non-existent in the show. Now, bear with me when I say that. When I say that, I mean that Aang literally exists just to exist in the show. He does not do anything that makes me think that he is the main character. He moseys around and maneuvers around and has these little moments, but never changes as a character. And it's so confusing. It's so confusing because if you just look at it as a character arc, it doesn't make sense as to why he's so strung up on one thing. And they always mention it, and they always make it a point to mention about like his struggle to be the Avatar every episode. But boy hasn't learned any other bending. The whole time he's only an airbender at that point. He hasn't learned water bending. He hasn't accidentally used fire bending. He hasn't accidentally used earth. He hasn't done anything of merit in the show. Everyone else around him is doing things except for him, the main character, which is one of the things that I'm just like, okay, there are flat characters that can work as main characters if the surrounding characters move the plot forward. That being said, that character still has to be watchable, and this character was not. I did not find myself enjoying this freaking main character, this fraud of an Aang. Okay, and that's the comparison coming back. That's the Avatar fan of me getting upset, but he felt like a fraud of an Aang. Okay, and those are I'm just gonna go now straight into like comparisons of of the original show because I can't hold it out anymore. I gotta talk about this because this pisses me off. They messed up my boy Aang. Okay, he's basically not Aang in the show. He looks really cool. He has moments where he enters the Avatar state and it looks really cool, right? Ooh, I'm supposed to really enjoy it, but it doesn't have any substance. It doesn't have any resonance with me. I don't care about it. I don't care about this Aang. I don't care about what he's gonna do. I don't care about what's gonna happen to him because he hasn't done anything. And my biggest, the moment I knew that this show was just not gonna hit for me was literally from the first episode, the first scene. One of the things that I was genuinely excited about for this version is what they said, which was they were going to expand on the air nomads. And they were going to show you what the air nomads were like before they died and show you their deaths. With some people didn't want to see that. I actually was excited about it because I felt like that was going to give the show much more weight, and that could be such a plus for a live action adaptation to make it different, but also still kind of keep the aspect of war, and then put that always in the back of Aang's head where he doesn't know. But in this show, they tell him instantly, which I don't remember if the anime show they do that. Remind me down in the comment section below if they do that. But as far as I'm concerned, in the animated show, he finds the Air Nomad Temple and he sees that they're all dead. And that's where he goes nuts because he realizes that they're dead and he doesn't have somebody, and that moment doesn't hit because they already before that moment had an exposition to him saying that his people were dead. And then they go to it, and that's what he go. And even him going crazy, like him and his teacher's relationship was just not hitting for me. It just wasn't working. It didn't. They never let my boy Aang actually be a kid. Like they let him be a kid for what, like maybe 5 minutes in total, and then the rest of the time he's just moping and groping. That's not Aang. I'm sorry. That's just not his character. And if you're going to do that, that means the show's screwed because he's the main character. The only reason why this show is not as dark as it is, and it is considered a kid show, let's be honest, is because Aang is the main character. Because he is such a joyful, free-spirited, like such a joyful character that he's surrounded by darkness. That's the whole like thing about it. That's what makes it difficult for him because he's a pacifist. He's a nomad. He's a monk. There's none of that here. None of that is here. Also, there's no moment for Aang. There's no moment in the show for it. It's supposed to be at the very end, but again, like I said, that moment holds no weight because the rest of the show was just about everyone else. And my issue with that is if you're gonna make a show about everyone else, right? Let's just say you butcher Aang. Make everyone else good. Cause I didn't feel like Katara felt like Katara at all. I didn't feel like Sokka was. I'm gonna be honest. I know my lady enjoyed it way more than I do, and I wish I had her experience. But Sokka, apparently they said jokes. I didn't. Apparently there were jokes in the show. Nothing in the show made me laugh. Tee hee giggle. Nothing in the show made me have fun. Nothing. And I don't know what to say about that. And the only reason why I'm ranting, the only reason why I'm raging again now is because I'm thinking about the animated show. And after the show, we finished the last episode of the show. I went back and we watched an episode of introduction of my favorite character. Shout out to Toph. I don't want them to do second season because I don't want to see them ruin Toph. But shout out to Toph. Her introduction in that animated show is peak goated, best introduction for an animated character possibly ever. Okay, but we watched that episode, and instantly, from the moment that episode started playing, I knew what the issue was with this show versus the animated show, and what made the animated show so special that these people do not understand is that there's heart. There's heart in the animated show. In this show, they focus on the darkness. They focus on the grittiness. And they strip every aspect of the heart of the show, which is the fact that they're kids surrounded by war. They're not trying to be adults. The only one maybe who's trying to be an adult is Sokka and Katara because they're orphans. And that's what makes their relationship with Aang so great, because Aang is such a loving orphan that, like, you would not think he's an orphan because he's such a spirited boy. And that chemistry. There was no chemistry with Katara and Aang. There was no chemistry with Sokka and Aang. There was no team chemistry with all three of them. All 8 episodes, they were all talking about the same thing. What do we got to do to make you an avatar? What are you? This is what we're gonna do to make. They were standing on business, but the business sucked. And it wasn't until the last episode where they go, okay, this is what we're gonna do. And I'm just like, bro! In the animated show, Aang already knew how to waterbend. In the animated show, there was things that happened that made the characters progress. There was things that happened that I don't know why you stripped it from this. And I knew it was a giant red flag as soon as the original creators left. And it's very evident as to why they left. Very evident. Because everything that kept that show so special is gone in this one. I don't care how pretty it looks. I don't care how... Which, by the way, it doesn't even look that pretty. Okay? Every... Base 90% of the show is green screen. And I don't care what excuse you're going to come up with for that. But it was obviously green screen. It wasn't even like played out green screen. There wasn't, like, literally the only thing in focus in 90% of the scenes were the characters. Everything else was out of focus, which means to tell me that's CGI'd, that's green screen, that's not real. Which means to tell me that 90% of this time, these characters are not in any real space. Which can be fine, right? But it's just, it sucks the life out of it. It does. It sucks the life out of it. It does not help me suspend my disbelief. And that's one of the things that is another issue that I had that I told my lady is I was like, there is no suspension of disbelief allowed in this show. There is no moment where it makes you go, okay, I'm in it. None. The whole time I'm just like, yo, I can see the bells and whistles. This magic trick, I know how this magic trick works. I'm not odd anymore. I'm not into it. I already know how it's going to go. I already know how it works. I already know what they did here. I already know what they did there. And I don't like it. Because again, like you'll have other things, other movies, other shows where they have CGI, they have green screen. But to be as blatant as this show was just... They were so blatant with the green screen. And again, I just don't recognize any of the characters. And I think I wish I didn't. I don't even wish that because I love the animated show. That's what I grew up on. It's peak. And it's hard not to compare that to this. Okay? And I'm not going to be an apologist for the movie that M. Night Shyamalan had either. That movie freaking sucked. There's a lot of people online as apologists for that because this now sucks also. This is just that. So the M. Night Shyamalan one was just poo-poo that we didn't know looked kind of good. This one is one that we're trying to tell ourselves isn't poo-poo because it looks kind of good. You know what I mean? They're both poo-poo. At the end of the day, it's they're both shit. It's just take your pick. So I'm not gonna be an apologist for that movie. That movie still sucked. And I don't want to say that this sucks. Okay, objectively, it did not work for me. That's what I will say. It did not work for me. And I guess I should say that about the movie. Objectively, that did not work for me either. But again, I let the emotions get ahead of me. I try to be a little bit more critical on it, and it's upsetting. It's upsetting. Like I said, that first scene, that's when I knew this just wasn't gonna work. When they got the relationship wrong with Aang and his teacher, and I felt nothing. Okay, that dialogue was just terrible between them. No chemistry either. It just felt like a rough draft. The whole thing felt like a rough draft. Some of the textures were weird on. It felt like a Party City Theater production just happened to be. Like if a theater production got Party City suits, and they filmed it, and they got like somebody to do the green screen last minute. That's what this was. Editor Jose here. Just want to clarify when I say theater production, I mean bad theater production. Because, like I said, I've been in theater before and I've seen plenty of theater productions that are way better, leagues and above this show. So just want to clarify love theater. Whether or not you want to agree with that, that's up to you, but that's what this was. And the only reason why I know that is I have been in theater, I've done shows, I've acted, which is why it's so tough for me because I watch this and when I can go and put myself in the director's shoe, and I know that dude did not push these actors or person, whoever directed every episode, they just they allowed scenes to happen and they were okay with it. There was no, and I could be wrong. Again, I'm not trying to attack anyone. I don't want anybody to get hate. It's just that's what it feels like. I don't know. I can go on for days. Again, this show did just did not work for me. The writing did not work. Pacing was off because of it. Characters did not feel like actual characters. They weren't allowed to live in the moment in this show. They just had to move on, cut, move, cut, move, cut, move on, cut, move on, cut, move on. Next scene, next scene, next scene, next scene, next scene. And that was the show. And before I say anything else, again, it did not work for me. I'm not going to rate it. Don't expect me to rate this. It just did not work for me. You can kind of tell my opinion on it based on everything that I've said. Last thing I will say is why the hell did you have Ozai in this show? Just so he could say that last bit of dialogue at the end? There was, there was no need to have him for 7 episodes. If all he was going to say was one line of substance, there was no need. And I understand you casted a certain actor to be in it. And he's an amazing actor. But there was no need for his character in this show. He didn't do nothing for this show. Again, I can talk for days. I don't know who these characters are. I don't know who these people are. I feel sorry for these people. But they are not the characters that I love.